Hey, so can everybody see my screen? Factors to keep in mind?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so just a quick refresher, I know we talked about this in prior weeks, but as you're building your college list, here's just some things to think about. A lot of times when you say I want to go to a big school, just keep in mind, like Penn State's like 35,000 students, Rutgers is a really big school. You just want to think about your lifestyle and whether or not, for example, if you attend Rutgers, if you don't mind getting on a bus for 15 minutes to go to your classes, then a larger school is fine. If you're a go-getter and you seek out help and tutoring and all of those sort of things on your own, then a big school would be fine for you. Whereas, the smaller schools, you're going to get a little bit more attention and one-on-one. So those are just some things to think about in terms of size. How much support do you need? How much interaction do you need with your professors? Are you okay with getting tutored by the teaching assistant instead of your professor? So those are just little things to keep in mind. Location, probably right now, most of you want to get out of New Jersey. Considering COVID, it's probably made that even worse. But just think about location and having access to home. A lot of students, when they start their college search process, they're really focused on getting as far away from home as possible. And then you kind of come full circle and realize that you want to be able to get home, at least a car ride home. So if you are applying to a lot of colleges that are far away, just keep in mind you want to have at least one or two schools that are within a driving distance, so that if you change your mind, you have those options. Think about things that you do as like hobbies or activities that make you happy. Make sure the schools have that. Really look at the entrance requirements, utilizing the Naviance graphing feature. And if anybody that's on this call today still doesn't have access to Naviance or can't get in, when we hang up, email me right away and I'll reset your account. I really want you to have access to that because that'll really help you to understand whether or not that's a good academic fit for you and if you should even be looking into it. Also the majors, I don't know if you were here the week we talked about using Naviance to develop your career plan or your major. I can certainly resend you that video or meet with you individually to kind of talk about your major. I remember when I was in high school, I used to just say, I want to be a lawyer just because I liked history and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to say something so that I didn't have to talk about it. But my hope for all of you is that you actually have, a true area of interest, or even if you can just narrow it down to 2 or 3 potential majors, you'd be in a good place. So these are just some things to think about. And then of course your cost. You want to talk that over with your family or whoever's helping you make this decision. Every college website has what we call a net price calculator. So, you should have 2 financial safety schools on your list, and then maybe like 3 in the middle where it's doable, and then maybe 1 or 2 reach financial schools, just so you're not stuck with a bunch of colleges that you get accepted to that you can't afford. So that's just some things to keep in mind. So I wanted to review that. Now I'm going to jump right into terminology. These are things that are going to come around as you're going through this process. You are going to hear things like regular admission, and regular admission is exactly what it says, regular admission. So usually those deadlines are somewhere in December or January of senior year. So you apply and then you get accepted sometime in March or early April. So that's regular admission. Rolling admission, now that's something just to keep your eye on. If you're looking at the admission deadline and it says something like June 1st of next year, that's probably a rolling school, or May. And what happens with rolling admissions is that they're accepting qualified students as they get applications. So you might be really qualified for a rolling admission school, but you applied late and they already filled their class, so you don't get accepted. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Early action is probably something that most, if not all of you, will take advantage of. Now, for the South Carolina, North Carolina schools, the Southern schools, Their early action deadline is in October, usually October 15th. So that's really early. That's October of your senior year. But most of the colleges in the Northeast, it's November 1st or November 15th. So early action is the best thing going. You apply early, you find out early, usually around winter break, which is great. You kind of go into that break with an acceptance. But you don't have to go to that college if you're accepted. You still have all the way till May 1st of senior year to make a decision if you want to go there. The other positive about early action is you might have access to more scholarship and grant money. So my advice to you is just plan on getting all of your applications in by mid-October and just be done with it, because you'll have the best access to scholarships, the best opportunity for admission. So that's early action. Now, early decisions become really popular among really competitive schools. So if you're the type of student that's looking at, like, I don't know, a Swarthmore or an Ivy, the Dukes of the world, if they offer early decision and if it makes sense for you and your family financially, and again, early decision is a family decision. So you have to have that conversation before you sign this contract. Early decisions binding. So if you're accepted under early decision, you must go to that college or university your first year. So why would you do that? Well, basically, early decision is the best opportunity for admission. And it should only be, you should only consider doing this if you know without a doubt that's your #1 school. It has everything you need to be happy, and that your family's on board. What happens in early decision, though, is there's a much higher acceptance rate. So, for example, Lehigh has an overall acceptance rate of about 18 to 20%. So they only accept 18% of their students who apply there. So that's pretty competitive. That's a really competitive school. But they accept 34% of their early decision applicants. So you can see it yields a better opportunity for admission. So that's the reason why some students make that decision. But again, I can't reiterate it enough. It's a big decision, so make sure you do your homework, make sure it's the right fit for you, and make sure your family agrees with that decision. But it can be useful. A lot of athletes, the coaches might pressure you into doing early decision. You can always ask them for an early financial aid read prior to signing that contract. So that's really important. Now, restrictive early action is a little bit different. And the only one that I know of that's still doing this is Harvard. There may be some others out there, I just haven't seen it. But restrictive early action basically is you apply early, but you can only apply to that school early action. You can apply to as many other colleges as you want regular decision, but only that one for early action. So if you're applying to rolling admission schools or regular decision schools or priority, that's fine if you do restrictive early action. Deferred admissions, this is something that some of the seniors have experienced over the last 2 months. You might apply early action or early decision, and the college is like, well, we like you, we're interested in you, we think that you're a good fit, but we want to see how you compare to all the students who apply regular decision. So you might see that, come across that next year. Don't panic. There's some strategies that we've been using with the seniors to help them stand out when they're deferred. And we'll wait and see how that works out for them this year. But there's definitely things you can do if for some reason you do early action or early decision and you're deferred. Waitlisted is a term that a lot of students don't like to see. And it's not the best news, but it may happen to you. It happens to a lot of students across the world. So, it could likely happen to you. Waitlisted is quite simply you apply and they don't want to deny you because they think that you're a good candidate, but they're not fully committed to accepting you either. So what happens with that is you get on a waiting list if you decide you want to do it. If this happens to you this time next year, we can work together on a strategy, but mainly I just wanted you to be aware of what the term is. Every school is different. It's a totally gray area. So like if you're waitlisted at one school, they might pull off a lot of students off the wait list, and then other schools really don't pull off the wait list. And then some schools may have 100 students on the wait list and you might be in a ranking order or not at all. It just really depends on the particular college or university. So that's wait list. Need blind admissions, this is something that you'll run across. Some colleges don't care if you can or cannot pay for the college, and some do. I had a student that was waitlisted at George Washington in Washington, D.C., and that's a very expensive school. I think it's almost $70,000 a year, and the family had saved for it. So the student called and said, hey, listen, if I get accepted, I don't need financial aid, grants, or scholarships, and the student was later accepted. So some schools are need blind, some aren't. So that's just something to think about too. This is a growing trend, especially for your graduating class. If you're not a great test taker, this is good news for you. Test blind basically means they're not looking at test scores for any reason. They don't need them. They'll consider you for all the grants and scholarships, honors colleges. They'll consider you for competitive majors without tests. They'll basically just be using your transcripts. Test optional, this comes into play with a college or university that's still reviewing test scores for admission and may use test scores more for scholarships and competitive majors. But they also would accept an application without them. That's a little bit of a gray area too. And if you need help deciding if you have a test optional school, you could just reach out to myself and your school counselor. And we can kind of counsel you into what decision might make sense for you, whether you should submit the current scores you have or not. And then open admissions is kind of like an Atlantic Cape Community College where everyone's accepted, but you have to either show proof of your test scores or take a placement test to start college level courses. So that's all I wanted to talk to you about in terms of the terminology. Just to be aware of. I mean, mainly it's early decision, early action, and regular decision and rolling that you're going to see going into the summer months. So you have to plan for that. All of your school counselors will be scheduling post-secondary planning meetings to go over specifically what your plan is and help guide you in this process. So be looking for emails about that. Now, in this virtual environment, it may seem really frustrating. I know it is for me as a college counselor. I can't go visit campuses, but I have been using these resources. These are virtual visit options. UVisit is probably the most popular one. If you have specific idea or things in mind that are really helpful, important to you, for example, maybe Greek life or residence life, or you want to talk to other students, that's where you'd want to jump onto the specific college or university website. Rowan University has, I feel like they have like 5 virtual events a day. That can be really helpful just to get a feel for maybe a major of interest, what campus life is like. At least it'll help you sort of narrow your list down a little bit. But on these campus visits, you can like hop around. If you have, maybe you know that you want to major in business and you specifically want to tour that building, you can drastically reduce your virtual visit time just by focusing on the areas of interest. But these are some websites I've been using. And I know in some other sessions, I talked to you about utilizing niche or niche, however you want to pronounce it. What's great about that website is it gives you a student perspective on social, emotional aspects of the college campus, overall student satisfaction, as well as they rank their professors. You know, were their professors committed? Were they accessible? What is the campus scene like? What are the dorms like? What's the food like? So you can get a lot of that information on that website as well. So I'm going to stop my part of the presentation. I'm going to stop the recording.